Chapter 6 A Day of Disasters by Kestrel Makfiber. Today is the 8th anniversary of Jarolina's death. With the passing years, the pain neither eases nor subsides. Bitter grief and deepest sorrow rage within me, every hour of the day, 360 days a year. I cannot fully express the agony and emptiness that gnaw away at my heart. I think of how happy I was on that 9th day of Glestin. A sprightly man of 47, I marched down the aisle of the village hall with such merriment and joy. My beautiful bride drew back her veil, and smiled the most radiant and beautiful smile any man has ever seen. We were hopelessly in love. Our hearts were one, and everything seemed as rosy as could be. 7 days later, she breathed her final breath. 1 week of wedded bliss, 8 years of lonely misery. The 16th of Glestin is always the worst day of them all. This year, I find myself hundreds of miles from home. War has come to Galaminia, and like everyone else, I've joined the army. My regiment was sent to the Grotchukan Empire as part of a counter-invasion. With the help of Boromir and Marduria, not the most desirable of allies, we hoped to capture Kingdom and force a surrender. Within a few days I was captured by the enemy, along with one of my waiters, Robin Hectus. We ended up in Gruken Golga, fortress of Prince Vorkrond, and assumed that we'd stay there for the rest of the war. Against all odds, though, we broke out of the fortress, fled through the forest, passed through Kingdom, and crossed over the Cronesian mountains. I've really no idea how we've managed to pull it all off, but we've only lost 1 man along the way. We're now on the very edge of the Empire, in the port town of Stevros. A perilous journey across the Crondian Bay awaits us. We are currently staying in a draughty old inn, poorly kept in my opinion, enjoying a terrific fried breakfast, the first decent breakfast I've had for quite some time. We're here at the invitation of a Mr. Ralkov, whom we met in the mountains. He says he's a pilot in the Air Force, and he's offered us assistance in crossing the bay. I've tried to voice some doubts as to whether we should trust him, but Montagolin, our leader, is completely satisfied with his papers. After breakfast, we're to meet the man who'll sail us out of the Empire, an old sea captain by the name of Gonforo. It looks set to be a very busy and eventful day. At least it'll distract my mind from the fresh pain and sorrow I always feel at this time. The 3rd hour. There is a loud knock on the door of the inn. In walks an old gentleman with an immense white beard. He has a black patch over his left eye. He doffs his sailor's cap and bows low to the ground.
"Allow me to introduce Mr. Kelton Gonforo,"
says Ralkov.
"Ever so pleased to meet you all,"
says Gonforo, revealing a toothy grin.
"Looks like you've seen a lot of action,"
says Montagolin, pointing to Gonforo's medals.
"You couldn't be righter,"
smiled Gonforo proudly.
"Mind you, I'm only a humble captain, never risen to such heights of greatness as you, my Lord General. I've heard ever so much about you, sir. I feel quite unworthy to stand in your venerable presence."
I begin to suspect that this Gonforo is a sickening creep. "When do we set off?" asks Algothian, a farmer.
"Soon as possible, I'd say," replies Gonforo. "Mind you, I must bow to your lordship's superior judgment on the matter. I wouldn't dream of usurping your authority, my Lord General. When do you wish to be a-going?"
"About an hour's time, I should think," says Montagolin. "We'll need to gather provisions first. How long will the crossing take, Mr. Gonforo?"
"Depends on the wind, my Lord General," says
Gonforo.
1 day if we're lucky, 2 days at most."
"I'll leave you to it then, gentlemen," says Ralkov. "It's been a pleasure meeting you all. I wish you the best of luck, fair winds, and a safe crossing." "We're in your debt, Mr. Ralkov," says Montagolin. "With Mr. Gonforo's help, we'll shave a good few days off our journey." "An honour to be of assistance," says Ralkov. "Farewell, noble comrades." "Now then," says Montagolin, We'd best fetch Mr. Slank and head off into the town.
Slank is Montegolin's butler. He's recently been charged with the murder of one of our number. His guilt is yet to be proven, but he's been held in the cellar overnight. Quilk and myself are ordered to retrieve him, and we hurry off to the kitchen. Upon opening the trapdoor, we find a very dirty, dusty, and dismal creature looking extremely sorry for himself.
"Pierce my heart!" exclaims Quilk. "You do look a mess, old Slanky boy."
"So would you, Mr. Quilk," scowls Slank, "were you to find yourself rejected by one's comrades, branded a murderer, and cast without pity into a cellar."
"You'll get a fair trial, mate," says Quilk, "but it won't take a judge long to see you're as guilty as could be."
With Slank in fetters, we leave the inn and scour the town, looking for provisions. Unlike Kendham, Stavros is not well guarded, and there are very few soldiers about. I am assigned the task of purchasing meat, with money lent by Ralkov, and locate a very reasonable butcher shop on the high street. I also find time to visit the nearest bookshop and buy a couple of rare volumes. All in all, a very profitable excursion. The 4th hour. As agreed, we all assemble down by the harbour, where Mr. Gonforo is to show us our craft. A surprising number of people are gathered by the docks, gazing out at the various warships and supply vessels amassed in the water. Boat spotting appears to be a popular pastime in Stavros. I found whole shelves of encyclopedias devoted to the subject at the bookshop. Out of the heaving crowds, a familiar figure emerges and hastens towards us.
"Follow me, honourable sirs," says Mr. Gonforo. "Follow me."
He leads us to a long row of small white boats moored to the docks by bright purple ropes.
"There she is," he announces proudly. "The Sea Panther."
He points to one of the boats, distinctly larger than the others, with a little red cabin and a single mast rising wearily from the deck.
"A fine vessel,"
remarks Montagolin, casting his eyes over the boat.
"Oh, you're ever so kind, my Lord General," beams Gonforo. "You've no idea how much that means to me, coming from so worthy a gentleman as yourself. She is a beauty, is she not, my Lord General? A handsomer beauty you never could find."
"Some of the metalwork looks a bit shoddy," sniffs Tando, a blacksmith.
"Not shoddy, noble sir," says Gonforo defensively. "Merely wear and tear. She's seen many battles, as the Sea Panther. Lovingly crafted by my own dear father she was. She's quite seaworthy, I assure you. Do step aboard, kind sirs."
We climb onto the homely boat and retreat into the cabin. Inside there is a long wooden table, surrounded by benches, which open up to reveal all manner of maps, tins, lanterns, and parchments. We pile our bags under the table and settle down for the voyage.
"At least we can relax for a little while," says Hectus. "No more walking until the other side."
"I expect there'll be plenty of dangers, though," predicts Tando. "The Crondian Bay is full of horrors. Sharks, dragons, turquoins, giant squid, not to mention sea panthers."
"We'll be safe enough up here," says Algothian. "I wouldn't be too sure of that," says Jaggles, a professor. "We may have vicious storms to reckon with, and enemy ships. I'm not looking forward one bit to this crossing."
My spirits dampened, I look out of the window and watch the Stavros harbour shrink away into the distance as the Sea Panther gradually sails off through the murky grey water. Far off, I see the mighty mountains of Chronesia rising majestically into the morning sky. We have finally left the Empire behind. A risky and hazardous voyage begins. The 5th hour. I turn to Gonera Alentanos and continue to plough through its pages. Everyone is very quiet and subdued. The sea is calm and tranquil. A light breeze pushes us gently eastwards. I read of royal romance and lavish weddings, and my mind wanders back to my own. What a dazzling, ravishing bride I had. Miss Nightingale Jarolina, the finest woman that ever was born. Beautiful locks of cascading black hair, intense eyes of the richest hazel, a delectable smile to melt the heart, a quiet, gentle spirit, a heart of gold, and an infectious zest for life. I can picture her now, that evening our paths first crossed, dressed in luxurious violet at the autumn dance. I'm not much given to dancing as a rule, but that night was a notable exception. Enticed by her smile and her irresistible charms, I waltzed away for half the night. We hit it off immediately, a match made in Marvia. 12 months of courtship, a 10-month engagement, and then a sumptuous winter wedding. 6 days in Silver Sands, the happiest days I can ever remember. Then we returned to Rowendale, Mr. and Mrs. Kestrel Makfiber, ready for a life of wedded joy at the Silver Centaur. But my beloved falls victim to a high fever. We call for Dr. Fripple. He fares the worst. The next morning, I am a widower. Despair consumes my soul. I glance around at my companions and wonder what secret pains and heartaches they may hide. What a colourful, motley bunch we are! General Montagolin is fast asleep in the corner, lost no doubt in dreams of battle and honour. Slank is crouched on the floor, looking mournfully at his fetters. Tando and Quilk are playing some sort of card game on the table. Algothian is feeding the pet lizard he seems to have acquired. Ramkhan and Volko are talking about the course of the war. Hectus is daydreaming as usual, probably musing on a certain Amarella. Gevins is playing a mournful melody on his pipe, and Jaggles is taking some fresh air out on deck with Mr. Gonforo. 12 assorted men in a boat, most of us complete strangers until a few months ago, now bound together on a long and gruelling journey. Will we make it back to our homes and loved ones? Will we survive all the perils and dangers that still lie ahead? Will this horrid war ever be over? Only time will tell. The 6th hour. Mr. Gonforo summons us up on deck.
"What is it, Mr. Gonforo?"
asks Montagolin.
Ever so sorry to disturb you, my Lord General, but there's an enemy ship drawing ever so close to us.
"A warship?"
asks Montagolin.
That's right, confirms Gonforo. It may be curious as to what we're doing in this part of the bay. We're not a battleship, you see, nor a supply ship. 12 men in a little craft like this, none of us in uniform, might look a bit suspicious if you catch my drift. Just thought I'd better be warning you, my Lord General.
How big is it? asks Volko.
Enormous, says Gonforo. Complete with cannons and everything. 80 men at least on board, armed to the teeth, on its way south, I reckon. Down to support the fleet at Carcanver. We'd best turn, my Lord General, run away.
"We'll hold our course,"
says Montagolin.
"Chances are they won't be too interested in a little boat like this. We might be a fishing boat or something."
Oh, you're ever so brave, my Lord General,
says Gonforo in his whining, sycophantic tones.
So bold. We may pull it off. You never know.
I can now see a Grochucan vessel, a massive silver warship with at least 20 cannons, coming slowly into view. She has a distinctive cobra figurehead, and every sail bears the familiar emblem of Grochuca, a red diamond in a black ring. Her name is prominently displayed on the side, the Silver Serpent. As she glides ever closer towards us, a fearful hush descends upon our boat as everyone holds their breath and waits. There is no avoiding her now. She'll have us in her sights. Suddenly she fires one of her cannons. We dive down in terror as the cannonball whistles over our heads. It seems we are under attack. We don't stand a chance.
"Pathetic shot," cries Montagolin. "I don't think much of their aim."
"Hadn't we better abandon ship, sir?" says Quilk. Another ball comes flying through the air. "Look," calls Algothian. "I don't think they're aiming at us. There's another vessel, one of ours, a Baromian ship." "Terrific," says Quilk sarcastically. "A cannon fight between 2 warships, and we're caught in the middle." "It's the Hanvakalda," says Ramkhan. "The what?" says Hectus. "The sea-wolf," explains Ramkhan. "It is ancient Ganvoran."
"Let's not stand here discussing ancient Ganvoran," exclaims Montagolin. "Get us out of here, Gonforo."
Mr. Gonforo instructs us to put the oars out. Our only hope is to row ourselves out of danger. Happily, most of the firing is high above our heads, but our mast could easily be hit. We row furiously, mustering every ounce of energy to move the oars as quickly as we can. It's exhausting work, but slowly we gain distance between ourselves and the ships. They begin to fade from sight. Drained and fatigued, we collapse onto the deck and breathe a huge sigh of relief. The presence of the sea-wolf probably saved our lives, or at least prolonged our freedom. It looks as though the bay will be just as perilous as predicted, and we've many miles still to go. Midday. We enjoy a first-class lunch of various goodies gathered from Stavros. My own favourite is the rabbit pie acquired by Jaggles. As I munch away at it, I notice Quilk looking uncharacteristically sullen and comment on his morose expression. "I'm pining," he confesses. "Oh, yes," says Algolian, a notable eavesdropper. "Who's the lucky lady?" Quilk looks around the cabin with a slight grimace of awkwardness. "Miss Felicia," he reveals. "I can't get her out of my head. She was a smashing girl, wasn't she?" "For a grow chokin'," says Givens, lifting his eyes from his diary. "But it's not as if anything could have come of it." "Suppose you're right," says Quilk. "A war's a war, but I'll never forget those eyes, the sweetest eyes I ever beheld." "Careful, Quilk," laughs Givens. "You're in danger of shattering your image. Magpie Quilk reveals his slushy depths. Who'd have thought it?" "Have you got a sweetheart, Gevsy boy?" asks Quilk. "Goldfinch Marinda," says Givens, staring at his feet. "She was captured by the enemy. I don't even know if she's still alive." "Don't give up hope, brother," says Algolian, sympathetically touching Givens' arm. "You've got a girl, ain't you, Hectus?" says Quilk. "Not quite," says Hectus, biting into a toffee. "But I'm hopeful. Her name's Amarella. She works with me at the inn. She's beautiful, isn't she, Mr. Makfiber? I go giddy every time I see her." Personally, I don't much fancy his chances with Amarella. She's a stunning lass, sought after by all the young men. He's got his work cut out if he wants to win her heart. Still, I wish him every success. I've grown rather fond of the boy, if truth be told. He may be a little on the clumsy side and a bit of a dreamer, but he's a kind heart. "What about you, Ramcarn?" says Algolian. "Is there someone special back home?" "Kiriana," says Ramcarn, with a discernible glint in his eye. "My wife. I am missing her terribly. We have 2 sons, Castus and Rastus. It's been ever so long since I saw them." "I wonder if I'll ever see her again," muses Quilk. "I doubt it," says Givens. "You never know," says Quilk. "Maybe once this war's all over and done, our paths will cross again. We'll fall in love and live happily ever after. You can only dream." All this talk of love and sweethearts is like a dagger in my heart. Oh, that I had my darling Jarolina waiting for me at home. Oh, that I could set eyes on her exquisite beauty once again. Oh, that I could feel her warm embrace and hear her soft and tender tones. Why did she have to be taken from me? Why did she have to go so soon? How keenly I feel the sting of desolation on this day of all days. I sink deep into a pit of misery. The 8th hour. The weather takes a turn for the worse. The sky darkens, the wind increases, and the waves grow wilder. It starts to rain. Our boat begins to be tossed about in a very unsettling fashion. Tando complains of seasickness. There is a flash of lightning. The wind strengthens still further. It looks as though we're in for a storm.
"No cause for alarm," says Gonfro. "I've been in far violenter conditions than this."
"How's our progress?"
asks Montagolin.
"Not too bad, my Lord General," says Gonfro. "Slow and steady. I'd best check the sail, my lord."
"I don't think I can stand much more of this," says Tando. "I hate the sea, I do."
The howl of the wind grows louder and louder. The rain is now pouring down in torrents. Lightning strikes again. Thunder rumbles overhead. The boat is thrown up into the air. The wind is whipping up the sea into a frenzy. There is a terrible scream outside. We rush out onto the deck.
"It's Mr. Gonforo," says Hectus. "He's fallen overboard."
We look out into the sea and observe Gonforo contending with the waves. Algothian and Ramkan dive in after him.
"Save me, noble sirs," cries the captain. "Help me!"
Montagolin throws a rope out into the water. Ramkan reaches Gonforo and wraps the rope round him. They start swimming back to the boat.
"Where's Algy gone?"
asks Quilk. We spot Algothian a good distance away from the others. He appears to be struggling. He's getting further and further from the boat. I hesitate and then decide there is only one course of action. I leap into the water. It is bitterly cold. Freezing, in fact. I strive to make my way towards Algothian, but find myself becoming disorientated.
"Careful, Makfiber!"
shouts Montagolin. I see Algothian ahead and hasten towards him, fiercely battling the icy waves. He seems to be in a desperate state.
"Makfiber!" he gasps. "Quickly, there's something wrapped round my foot."
I grab hold of him and attempt to drag him away, but there is resistance. I feel something cold and clammy on my leg and vigorously kick at it. I catch sight of something red flickering under the waves. Next moment, I'm being dragged beneath the surface and taken a huge mouthful of seawater. I come up coughing and spluttering and keep kicking away at the horrible slimy thing wrapped around my foot. I go under a second time and feel like I'm fighting for my life, thrashing around and shaking my legs and tugging at whatever it was that had me in its grasp. Its grip loosens a little, and I struggle to the surface, gasping for air. I can't see Algothian anywhere. There's a faint muffled cry. I briefly glimpse his head, bobbing up temporarily, and then disappearing again beneath the water. With what little strength I have left, I push my way towards him, feel his body under the surface, and try to heave him up. There's a sharp yank at my left leg. My attacker was renewing its efforts. I reach down, with my other arm still clutching Algothian, and grapple with something coiled round my ankle. It clings on stubbornly, but after considerable straining, I wrench myself free. Then, with all my might, I pull Algothian towards me again. He is released. We swim furiously away. More lightning strikes overhead. I've lost all sense of direction. I've no idea where the boat is. An indistinct call comes to us from somewhere. We head towards the sound, and the boat comes into view. Just as I feel something winding itself around my leg again, a rope is thrown towards us. I quickly tie it round Algothian, and he is hauled away to safety. A second rope splashes into the water beside me, and I make a desperate grab for it. I'm being pulled in 2 directions. I wonder if I'll make it. Whatever it is that's got hold of me has incredible determination, but my friends on board won't give up. They heave, and eventually my leg is set free and I clamber up onto the boat. I stand there, soaked and shivering on the deck, shaken and fatigued. A warm blanket is wrapped around me. Gonforo appears to be lying unconscious by the cabin. Quilk and Ramkan are attending to him. He splutters into life and scrambles to his feet.
"My dear Mr. Ramkan,"
he says, bowing low before him.
"You've saved my life. You're ever so brave, my good sir. However shall I thank you? What a hero you are. I'm ever so grateful."
"What happened to you, Algy?" asks Quilk. "Something grabbed hold of me," says Algothian, "like a terrible slimy arm."
"Crundy, an octopus," says Gonforo solemnly. "A horrifying foe, ever so dangerous. I'm surprised you're still alive."
"Let's get back inside," says Montagolin. "We don't want any more men overboard. Into the cabin, everyone, into the cabin."
The 9th hour. The weather has died down a little, and we are all sitting in the cabin enjoying a cup of tea. Jaggles says he managed to procure the milk from a farm on the outskirts of Stavros. We are all extremely grateful. I, for one, cannot tolerate tea without milk. Just as I am draining the last few drops from my cup, Slank springs dramatically to his feet.
"Gentlemen," he cries, "I can bear this no longer."
"Silence, Slank!" roars Montagolin. "Sit back down immediately."
"I shall not," says Slank defiantly. "Neither shall I maintain my taciturnity."
"You most certainly shall," shouts Montagolin.
"Let him speak, sir," pleads Skevins. "It's only fair."
There is a general murmur of agreement, and Montagolin reluctantly consents to let his butler speak.
"Let me begin,"
says Slank, striding over to the other side of the cabin,
"by expressing my utter incandescence at the appalling manner in which I have been treated. You, Lord General, have conducted yourself in the most disgraceful and preposterous of fashions. Your behaviour has saddened, grieved, and alarmed me in ways I never thought possible. Formerly, Lord General, I have always held you in the highest regard, admiring you as a most worthy and exemplary gentleman, abounding in wisdom and replete with courage. I cannot tell you how drastically and severely my opinion of you has been altered. As for the rest of you, I am pained and distressed that you have all so readily accepted my guilt, without so much as hearing me defend myself. I stand here a broken, dejected, and horrified young man. And now let me set forth the reasons why you must release me from these abominable fetters. In the first instance, let me press upon you the fact that I have had no prior acquaintance with Mr. Merlin Rhombus. Until his arrival in Gruchengolga, he was a complete stranger to me. You can all vouch for this. Did he demonstrate any previous knowledge of me when he first entered the fortress? Was there any conversation between us that suggested we already knew one another? If I am not greatly mistaken, Mr. Algothian, you arrived with him, did you not? Did he appear to recognize me when you came into our hut to be registered? I myself could perhaps have hidden my knowledge of him, but how in Ganvor could I have constrained him to do likewise? Yet if Mr. Rhombus and I were strangers, then what possible motive could I have had for bringing about his demise? In the second instance, I am known to some of you from those happy days before this loathsome war. Some have suggested that the murderer might be a Grochucan spy. I ask you, could that possibly be true of me? I have been in your service for 10 years, Lord General. Have I had any opportunity for espionage? Have I ever been in a position to conduct secret meetings with foreign agents? Have I ever done anything to give grounds for suspicions? Certainly not. I am known to you too, Mr. Makfiber. Is it reasonable to suppose that I have been in contact with the Empire all these years? Besides, if I were a spy, why did I not raise the alarm when we plotted an escape? And why Mr. Rhombus? What could I gain from killing him? Then there is my character. I could amass many reputable friends in Galliminia who would testify to my placid, sober, and self-controlled disposition. Your own wife would bear witness, Lord General. Mr. Talvin and Mr. Groggles and Miss Velina would join her. Have I ever displayed the characteristics of a murderer? Could a timid, mild-mannered, retiring butler like me be the perpetrator of such a hideous crime? Use your reason, gentlemen. Furthermore, the evidence upon which I am charged is shallow in the extreme. The brake of the waggon was found in my bag. As I have protested before, anyone could have placed it there. Is it unreasonable to suppose that the real culprit, wishing to deflect suspicion elsewhere, deliberately concealed the item in my sack to make me appear the guilty one? Mr. Quilk objects that I would surely have noticed such a bulky item in my bag. But could it not have been placed there just moments before it was discovered? I do not even know how to work the brake of a waggon. I am innocent, gentlemen. Unbeknown to you, gentlemen, the General actually commissioned me to undertake a secret investigation to ascertain who the murderer was. I have in my bag a notebook in which my findings are recorded. Examine its pages, gentlemen. Is there any hint that I am covering up my own crime? Do I not record my dealings with you with great precision and accuracy? The murderer is still at large, gentlemen. I suggest you liberate me from my bonds and assist me in finding the true wolf in our midst. You treat me with intolerable injustice.
Slank sits back down again, and an awkward silence grips the cabin. I, for one, have been somewhat sceptical that Slank is the man, yet I struggle to think who it could possibly be. Too many mysteries have surrounded us for my liking. It makes me very uneasy. An absurdly simple exit from Golga, a distinct absence of guards pursuing us, a strange grey rider in the forest, the odd circumstances surrounding Rhombus's death. It all adds up to a perplexingly inscrutable enigma. The 10th hour. I am invited to play cards with Volko, Jaggles, and Gonforo. I welcome the distraction. As we play, Gonforo relates some of his maritime adventures.
Been everywhere, I have, he says. Sailed all over. I've been to the stormy straits of Orn Tavern Rocks. I've been to the golden coasts of Algan Calad. I've been past the shores of Cavernia, the horriblest place I've ever seen. Makes my blood shiver just to thinking about it. Looks even worse than all the stories I tell you. I never want to be going there again. Mind you, I caught a glimpse of Marvia too. What a place, noble sirs. A pearly, glistening, dazzling island to take your very breath away. Ever so beautiful it was. Of course, I couldn't get very close, could I? A heavily defended place there never was. What I'd give to spend just a single day there. Paradise, they say. Utter paradise.
Fascinating, says Jaggles. I've always dreamed of setting eyes on Marvia, home of the 7 protectors, the birthplace of Halvrandi, and the very centre point of Ganvor. I'm surprised you got near enough to glimpse it. How is it you weren't kept at bay by the cannons?
Used my eyeglass, says Gonforo, taking it out from his pocket. Ever so useful it is. Wouldn't be without it.
You can't place a dragon on a cross, Makfiber, says Volko. Have you never played before? 3 12s, gentlemen, and the game, I believe.
Well played, Mr. Volko, says Gonforo, gathering up the cards. You're ever so skilful. I feel quite unworthy to be playing in the company of such a master.
Years of practice, says Volko. My wife is even better. Very competitive. She beats me every time.
What do you think of Slank's speech, then? Asks Jaggles. Do you think we should let him go free?
Definitely not, says Volko. I've never liked the man. A slimy, slithering reptile, if you want my opinion. Always crawling up to the general, isn't he?
Oh, a bit of a sycophant, is he? Says
Gonforo, beginning to deal.
I can't stand sycophants, noble sirs. Make my blood boil.
We can't tie him up for being disagreeable, says Jaggles. Is he guilty? That's the question. Personally, I'm not convinced.
What was he like, this Mr. Rhombus? Asks Gonforo. Unpleasant fellow, was he?
Not at all, says Jaggles. Very friendly chap. Quite a gentleman. That makes his death all the more puzzling.
A bit too cheery, in my opinion, says Volko. Always looking on the sunny side of things. Drove me to insanity. But he seemed decent enough. Who's got the 7 of stars?
I believe that's me, says Jaggles. Personally, I think we should let the poor fellow go free until we're back home. Must be pretty rotten for him, crouched in the corner in those bonds. One can't help feeling sorry for the man.
We carry on playing for at least half an hour. It helps take my mind off Jarolina.
The wind has died down a great deal by now, but it is still raining. Thick fog descends upon us, and Gonforo sets up some lanterns. All seems bleak and dreary. I am growing weary of being at sea. I can't wait to set foot on dry land again. The 11th hour. The fog is still with us, and there is a deathly chill in the air. I return to Gonera Elantinos, seeking escape from the present monotony of our journey. All is quiet for at least half an hour. Then Mr. Gonforo comes in, wakens the sleeping general, and whispers loudly in his ear.
Ever so sorry to disturb you, my Lord General,
he whines, stooping to the ground.
But there's something you ought to be a-seeing.
What is it? Asks Montagolin, not looking best pleased to be awoken.
Difficult to say, my Lord General, says Gonforo. You'd best be looking for yourself.
Bowing low once more, Gonforo leads Montagolin out on deck. Curiosity compels the rest of us to accompany him.
Can't see a thing, says Tando dismissively.
Over there, my good sirs,
says Gonforo, waving wildly.
Over there.
Burn me alive, says Quilk. It's another boat. Grillchuken? asks Jackals, straining to see.
Yes and no,
says Gonforo, turning noticeably pale.
That is to say, it's Grochuken all right, but not part of the fleet.
What is it then?
asks Montagolin. Gonforo looks slowly round the deck and hesitates. His eyes bulge with melodramatic dread. He leans closer towards Montagolin and croaks out a single word in terrified tones.
Pirates!
At that very moment, out of the mist, I clearly see the unmistakable sail of a pirate ship, 2 curved swords and a black crown on a blood-red field. Slowly, the rest of the vessel comes into view. It is only slightly larger than our own, but considerably more impressive. I can only see 9 men on deck, but they look as fierce and savage as a pack of wolves. All are armed with the customary swords, colourful bejewelled hilts and long curved blades that look more like giant hooks than effective fighting weapons. The tallest among them, appearing to be the captain, has a thick orange beard and a menacing scowl. Upon his head is a black feathered cap, and under his arm is a long brutal whip. He bows down mockingly towards Montagolin and lets out a long booming chuckle.
"Greetings, gallant Gallimane," he cries out.
"Shall we have your loot, or shall we have your lives?"
"We shall not surrender, if that's what you mean," says Montagolin.
"How gratifying,"
grins the pirate.
"My men are in need of a little sport. They grow fat, General. They grow flabby."
"I warn you," says Montagolin, "my men are soldiers of the Gallimane army. We are a highly trained and indomitable force."
"You have courage, General,"
smiles the pirate.
"Boldness, bravery, and backbone. That's what I like to see. It will be an honour doing battle with you."
"Turn about now, and we will spare you," says Montagolin. "Persist, and we will have no choice but to slay the lot of you."
"Fighting talk,"
says the pirate.
"That's what I like to hear. A bit of banter before battle. I look forward to seeing how you fare with only 2 swords between you. What will you use, General? Your fists, your feet, your furniture?"
"That's a good idea," whispers Quilk. "Grab a chair, Mackie boy." "Are we to bandy words forever?" says Montagolin. "Come over here if you reckon yourselves invincible."
"With relish,"
says the pirate, licking his lips.
"with pleasure, pride, and panache. Come on, lads. Time for bloodshed, battering, and booty."
His 8 companions give a hearty cheer, cut short by the sudden collapse of one of them onto the ground. Impatient to begin, it seemed that Ramcarn had fired a knife into his chest.
"Foolish," says Montagolin. "Now we've only the swords."
"And a dagger,"
says Gonforo, whisking one out from under his cloak.
"Ever so handy, my Lord General, and there are more knives under the benches."
We rush into the cabin and arm ourselves with whatever we can find. We certainly have the numerical advantage, but precious little else. Their boat draws nearer. I begin to fear for my life.
"Bolt the cabin door," says Montagolin. "Down you get, men. It's 12 against 8. The odds are in our favour."
"I don't suppose someone could release me from my bonds," says Slank. Montagolin reluctantly agrees, and we cut Slank free. We all crouch down on the cabin floor, armed with knives, sticks, and broken chair legs, and wait for our foes to arrive. We hear low voices whispering. The deck begins to creak as the pirates clamber aboard. Sweat pours out of me.
"Hiding, eh?"
booms their captain.
"Full of fear and fright, are we? Tormented with terror and trembling. Open the door, Crixie. Put them out of their misery."
We hear the handle of the door being rattled, but the door does not budge. A curved sword comes slashing through the woodwork. "We shall charge them," says Volko, "not skulk in here like cowards."
"We must use our home advantage," says Montagolin. "Make them come to us. Basic military strategy, Volko.
The sword continues hacking its way through the door. A hand appears. Quick as the wind, Ramkhan launches a knife, forcing the hand to retreat.
Barricade the door,
orders Montagolin.
Push that table against it.
Volko and I start moving the table across the room, but something heavy is now being rammed against the door. The pirates are trying to force it open with all their might. It's sure to yield. The waiting will soon be over. I brace myself for a fight. Within a minute, the door bursts open, and in storm 4 ferocious pirates. To my surprise, Professor Jaggles springs to his feet and flings himself at one of the assailants. The pirate immediately drops to the ground and falls asleep at Jaggles' feet. There is only one explanation.
"Halvurandy!"
cry the other pirates.
"They have a Halvurandus!"
Then stop him,
calls back the captain.
Seize him, secure him, restrain his hands. That'll bring him under control.
One of the pirates grabs the professor's arms and drags him out of the way. Our chance of victory diminishes. Volko and Gevins decide to make a charge. Swords out before them, they lunge at the intruding pirates and force them back out onto the deck. The rest of us follow their example and plunge ourselves into the heat of battle. Straight away, I find myself face to face with a particularly ugly brute. In panic and desperation, I thrash about wildly with my broken chair leg, and somehow manage to knock the sword from his hand. In a fit of rage, he picks me clean off the floor and hurls me across the deck. Crashing into a pile of barrels, I am temporarily immobilized, but obtain an excellent view of the action. I see Quilk and Hectus teaming up to fend off a wooden-legged fellow with only one eye and one hand. Elsewhere, Volko is in fierce combat with the captain. Volko seems to have been stabbed in the leg, but he is fighting on valiantly. Ramkhan and Gonforo are now involved in a fist fight with the villain who threw me into the barrels. Gonforo looks as though he's lost a tooth. Quilk and Hectus have now overcome their opponent and are throwing him into the sea. With one overboard, one asleep, and one taking Jaggles to the other boat, the pirates are down to 5 men. But 4 of us are down on the ground. It's 7 against 5. It could still go either way. I decide it's time to rejoin the fight and attempt to rise to my feet. I pick up one of the barrels and take a swing at the nearest pirate, knocking him down onto the deck. He's quickly back on his feet again and finds himself facing the mighty Gevins. Montagolin has now joined the attack on the captain, wielding what looks like a metal shovel. I wouldn't like to be on the receiving end of that. He lands a blow on the top of the captain's head and kicks him to the ground. Volko thrusts his sword towards the captain's neck.
"Preserve us,"
pleads the captain.
"Pay us, pardon us."
"What shall we do with him, General?" asks Volko.
We can't kill a defenceless man, says Montagolin, however much of a scoundrel he may be. Throw him overboard.
"Gladly," says Volko. "Give us a hand, Gevins."
Well, that wasn't too bad, was it? Says Montagolin. Good show, man. Bravo.
"We're not exactly unscathed," says Slank. "We've sustained considerable damage. Mr. Volko, 1 stab wound to the left leg. Mr. Tando, unconscious in the cabin. Mr. Ramkhan, injury to the right arm. Mr. Gonforo, 1 tooth absent without leave. And Professor Jaggles, captured by the enemy."
We could have come off a lot worse than that, Slank, says Montagolin. Get back in the cabin, gather up the other pirates' men, throw them overboard.
"How are we going to rescue the Professor?" asks Gevins.
No time for that, I fear, says Montagolin. He could be anywhere by now. We'll just have to carry on without him.
"How insufferably heartless," cries Slank. "You give up on people very easily, General. I am appalled."
Silence, Slank, shouts Montagolin. Get back in the cabin. I'm sure we'd all like to rescue the Professor, but it simply isn't feasible. It's far too risky to stay in these waters any longer than we have to.
"Very true, my Lord General," agrees Gonforo. "You're ever so prudent. What a leader you are, my Lord General. So wise, so brave, so skilled. The way you wielded that shovel, my Lord General, it was a joy to watch. Like a master swordsman. You're a true hero, sir, a true hero."
The last of the pirates are flung overboard, and our dangerous voyage continues. Another man has been lost along the way. I wonder which of us will be taken next. The 12th hour. The sky is beginning to darken.
We've been on this vessel for 8 long hours now. I don't know how much more of it I can stomach. I begin to sort through all the pockets in my jacket. It's amazing how much clutter one accumulates. And find a picture of Geraldina. It's the one where she's wearing her turquoise dress and summer's day hat. It brings back memories of the only summer's day we ever shared together. I remember walking through that field of buttercups, hand in hand, happy and laughing and full of the joy of life. I remember the warm, gentle touch of her soft, tender hand, and the bright, rosy hue in her cheeks as she smiled. What a shared delight it was just to be in her presence and gaze into those eyes and enjoy the loveliness of her company. How deeply, truly, hopelessly in love with her I was. Hector comes over with a welcome cup of tea.
"Who's that, sir?"
he asks, looking at the picture. I look him straight in the eye and carefully weigh up whether I should tell him. My throat almost dries up completely as I seek to articulate my reply. "Kestrel Geraldina," I tell him.
"Kestrel?" he says. "Is she your sister?"
I pause momentarily and invite Hector to sit down beside me. I decide it is probably time to let him know the truth. After all, he's almost like a son to me. I can feel tears welling up within me and try my utmost to hold them back. "No, boy," I say. "She's not my sister. She's my wife." Hector looks at me with wide-eyed astonishment.
"I never knew you had a wife, sir," he says. "How come I've never seen her before?"
"She's no longer with us, boy," I say, my lip beginning to quiver. "She died 8 years ago this very day." There, I had told him. It is the first time I've ever spoken of the matter to anyone. It has always been too painful to speak about. I've never uttered a word on the subject to a single soul.
"I'm terribly sorry to hear that, sir," says Hector. "I never knew that. I always thought you were a bachelor."
7 days, I say. That's how long we were married. A paltry 7 days.
"She looks very beautiful,"
says Hector, glancing again at the portrait.
"What was she like?"
"Perfection," I reply. "Utter perfection. Gentle, patient, graceful, full of zest and energy. The sweetest woman I've ever known. Always thinking of others, always full of affection, so kind and sympathetic, and so easy to talk to. I've never been good at opening up, you see, boy. I'm a very private person by nature. But somehow or other she seemed to unlock me. We'd talk for hours and hours, everything, anything, all things under the sun. And she was such fun to be around, so spirited, so vivacious. She brightened up everyone's lives. Delicious sense of humour, too. She used to tease me dreadfully, but it did me good. Taught me to laugh at myself. I tend to take things rather too seriously, you see. She injected mirth and merriment into my life. I adored her, Hector. She was utter perfection."
"She sounds wonderful," says Hector.
"That she was, boy," I say. "The best woman a man could ever wish for. I don't know what she saw in me, if truth be told. I'm not exactly Mr. Bright and Cheery, am I? Well, not until I met her. She changed my life, Hector. Gave me a happiness I never dreamed possible. Every day I woke with gladness, knowing that I'd seen my Geraldina. I became a new man, content, fulfilled, joyous, happy. You've no idea what transformation she brought. I'd finally found a meaning and a purpose. And then to be robbed of her. I hesitate, feeling myself about to explode. I take a deep breath, swallow hard, and continue. It was pain beyond belief, I tell him, fighting back the tears. I've never felt anything like it before. My dreams smashed, my life destroyed, my happiness snatched away. I couldn't cope, Hector. I was in a black pit of utter torment. Some days the pain was so intense I thought I would burst. 7 days, Hector. That's all we got. 7 days of marriage and then total misery. Such a cruel fate, boy.
But you know what, Hectus? It was all worth it. I wouldn't trade those 20 months for anything. I'm glad I met her, even though it's cost me such dreadful agony. Knowing her was the best thing that ever happened to me. I realise I've probably been talking for rather too long, and decided it's time to shut up. Forgive me, Hectus, I say. You don't want to hear me blabbering on about my misfortune. Tell me about you and Amarella. How do you fancy your chances? Has she given you any encouragement?
It's difficult to say, he replies. Sometimes I think so, sometimes I'm not so sure. How can you tell, sir? How did you know whether Jarolina liked you or not?
I didn't, I say. Not until I asked her. I mean, we seemed to get on very well. She was very friendly towards me, but I couldn't be sure until I asked for her hand.
When did you do that?
Inquires Hectus. A few days after we first met, I answer. She didn't give me an outright yes, of course. It's not the custom these days, is it? She said she'd court me for a few months and then consider my proposal. Sensible woman. You can't agree to marry someone you don't really know. But you've known Amarella quite some time now, haven't you? I suggest you stop delaying and dive right in with a question. If you see a chance of happiness, grab it with both hands. That's my advice. She won't be free for long, boy. She's a fine lass.
I nearly asked her once before, says Hectus, but my tongue dried to the roof of my mouth. I can't get any words out when I'm around her. My brain goes to jelly.
I know the feeling, I smile, recalling my own faltering attempt at a proposal.
She's a wonderful girl, isn't she, sir? He says. It was love at first sight, you know. I remember standing there outside the Silver Centaur. The door opened, and there she was, shining out like some beautiful Marvian princess. I thought I must have been dreaming. Such lovely, mesmerising eyes. I'd never met anyone so lovely in all my years. I didn't get any sleep at all that night. I couldn't get her image out of my mind. I just lay there all night long thinking about her, marvelling at her, longing to be with her. I was absolutely determined to see her again as soon as I could. I was so excited when you gave me the job. I'd get to see her every single week. And she's even better than I could ever have dreamed, sir. Oh, I wish I could marry her, Mr. Makfiber. I'd do anything to win her hand.
I find it strangely therapeutic listening to Hectus talk in this vein. I suppose it takes my mind off my own unhappiness. I'd love him to get together with Amarella. They'd make a lovely couple. But he'll have an awful lot of rivals to fend off. He's certainly got his work cut out. The first hour of the night. Dinner is served. An excellent repast of leek and carrot soup, lamb casserole and apple crumble. Full and replete, I drift off to sleep and gain some first-class rest. My dreams centre around Jarolina and the happy times we shared in our short time together. I awake thoroughly refreshed and just in time to watch a magnificent sunset. The second hour. The rain returns and the wind strengthens once again. We are all gathered together in the cabin, enjoying some delicious hot chocolate courtesy of Mr. Quilk. Mr. Gonforo has just finished regaling us with another of his maritime adventures.
"We wonder where Jaggles is right now," says Algothian, draining his mug.
"He'll be all right," says Quilk. "No doubt the pirates will want to exploit his talents. I don't think they'll kill him."
"Poor fellow," says Givens. "Such a shame we can't do anything to rescue him."
"Least he's better off than he was," says Quilk. "I'd rather be on a pirate ship than back in Golga. He's a clever chap, the Professor. I'm sure he'll outwit the pirates and get away before long." "How's Tando?" asks Algothian. "Has he woken up yet?"
"Still unconscious," reports Ramkarn, who was sitting next to Tando. "His breathing is fine, but he is looking in a bad way. I hope we don't lose another."
"He'll pull through," says Volko. "He'll be up and moaning and groaning before long."
"How's your leg, Mr. Volko?"
asks Gonvoro.
"Looked ever so painful, it did. Very nasty wound."
"I've had worse," says Volko. "It's not as bad as it looks." "Shame we haven't got a doctor among us," says Algothian. "I think we've all been injured in some way or other by now." "How much further till we reach the other side?" asks Hectus.
"Difficult to say, my good sir,"
says Gonforo.
but we've made good progress than I've made for ages.
Any hot chocolate left? Asks Algothian. It's absolutely splendid. Plenty, says Quilk, refilling Algothian's mug. Anyone else?
Might I be allowed a little? Says Slank, still tied up in the corner. Or is it a privilege too high for the likes of a worthless killer?
No need for sarcasm, Slank, says Montagolin. If there's one thing I can't abide, it's sarcasm. Give him a mug, Quilk. We can't have him dying of thirst.
Have you considered my plea yet, General? Asks Slank. Am I to remain in these bonds forever, or will you let me go free?
You'll stay in those bonds for as long as I see proper, says Montagolin. I'm not taking any risks. We can't afford to lose any more men.
I'm just popping outside, my Lord General, says Gonforo, heading for the door. Time to check on the sail.
What are those lights? Asks Hectus, pointing out of the window.
I hope it's not another ship, says Gevins. I don't think I can face another fight.
Maybe it's one of ours, says Algothian. You never know, we might get a free ride home.
What is it, Gonforo?
Asks Montagolin, shouting out through the door.
Land, my Lord General,
says Gonforo, peering in with a toothy smile.
Our voyage is over.
We can't have reached Mesonestia already, can we?
Says Montagolin.
Surely not.
We've had good winds, my Lord General,
answers Gonforo.
We'll be there in 5 minutes.
This news comes as something of a relief to me. It will be good to tread on dry land again. I'm not all that fond of boats, if truth be told. We all set about packing our bags and making ready to disembark. I hurry out onto deck. I can just about make out the shoreline. There are about 20 greenish lights flickering along the coast. Nobody is quite sure what they are. We soon reach the shore, and Gonforo ties up the boat to a mooring pole. Without delay, I jump right off the boat and onto the smooth grey rocks. The others follow behind me.
This isn't Mesonestia,
cries Montagolin.
It certainly ain't,
grins Gonforo.
I'm ever so sorry, my Lord General. I'm afraid you've all been had.
Had?
Roars the General.
Had? What do you mean, had?
I'm afraid you're back in the Empire, my Lord General, explains Gonforo. We're on the northern coast of the Crondian Sea. Afraid Mr. Ralkov wasn't quite who he seemed. Paid me to bring you all here.
You scoundrel,
shouts Montagolin.
Let's make a run for it, men.
I wouldn't do that if I were you, says Gonforo. There's about 20 armed soldiers up the path there. Your welcome party. I really am sorry, my Lord General. The money was too good.
The lights begin to move slowly towards us, and soon a whole platoon of Grochukan soldiers comes clearly into view.
Good work, Mr. Gonforo, says the sergeant. You'll be handsomely rewarded for your efforts. Come on then, men. Let's take them to Barracus.
Barracus? Exclaims Ramkarn. Isn't he one of Vorkron's men? I ask. The most dangerous man in all Ganvor, says Ramkarn. Vorkron's chief spy, a master of disguise and lover of torture. The soldiers seize hold of us and begin to drag us all away. I can barely take in what is happening. I thought all along it was too good to be true. We are taken up a long winding path and pass between two great rocks. Ahead there is some fortress or other, an oppressive black mass of towers, spires and battlements. My heart sinks as I realise that this is to be our horrible new abode. It looks even worse than Gruken Golga. We are marched up to a huge iron gate. I stare through the bars and cannot believe the sight that confronts me. It is simply too incredible to comprehend. There, on the other side of the gate, clear and plain and unmistakable as day, is the smiling face of Mr. Rhombus.